Welcome to Self-Help Book Club. We read self-help books and see if they help. Today's book is Tarot for Change, Using the Cards for Self-Care, Acceptance, and Growth by Jessica Dore. Tarot for Change is a book that connects traditional tarot card symbolism with psychological wisdom. Jessica Dore gives a lot of practical self-care advice and applies a lot of Jungian theory along with other theories to try and help readers navigate life's challenges. For every tarot card in the classic 78 card Rider-Waite deck, Jessica Dore writes an entry that reimagines the meaning of the card, referencing various psychological terms, theories, etc. Dore encourages readers to use her book for self-care, which presumably one would do by drawing a card from their own tarot deck and finding her corresponding chapter. Or you could turn to a random page of the book and treat the book itself like a deck. That's kind of fun. The way the book starts, Jessica Dore explains her background. She was very into tarot, and she also worked in publishing in the psych world. She learned a lot from publishing academic books and wanted to make those resources accessible to people seeking self-help. She got her master's in social work, but found she was most interested in spreading the knowledge she had found. Hence, this book. Right out of the gate, I relate to Jessica's background a lot. I love tarot, I read it every day. I'm also gearing up to pursue a master's in social work myself for very similar reasons to Jessica. I'm interested in psychology, I'd like to be a resource for people, and I'm writing a book, so I appreciate this book. My friend Deanne Smith actually gave this to me before I started this podcast because they know how much I like tarot, and Deanne will be here momentarily to discuss the book. That being said, I really love practicing tarot. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before on the podcast. And before reading this, I was pretty attached to my idea of what the cards mean. So I had to go in with an open mind, you know. Jessica does describe the traditional narrative of the deck before she starts, but then she really goes her own way with it. So that was an adjustment for me, but that's just because I'm a big tarot head, you know. I have a joke about this. I told my therapist, I think I might be addicted to tarot. I'm obsessed with it. I read it every day. She got really quiet when I said that. And then she got out her tarot deck. She's like, "You're not crazy, girl. We're crazy." I said, "I think I'm neurodivergent." She said, "I think you're an indigo child." You can tell a spiritual therapist anything. I told her I had an hour-long conversation with a ghost today. And what did the spirit say, my prophet? Don't get me wrong. I'd rather have a therapist who believes in spiritual than one who doesn't, but I feel like there's got to be some kind of happy medium. Because right now, I'm an unhappy medium, but now I am happy. And I think this book actually is a happy medium. I'll give you an example of how I use the book, okay? So I pulled a card from my tarot deck. All right, this is my tarot deck, or one of my 6 tarot decks I have. And I pulled the Star Tarot card, one of my favorites. The Star, again, a card in the Rider-Waite deck specifically, is a card that follows the Tower. The Tower is an upheaval card that looks like 9/11. I won't show you, but you can Google it. A lot of people are afraid of that card. Change. What does it all mean? It can be kind of scary. But what follows the Tower is the Star. The Star represents hope, faith, and renewal, getting in touch with your highest good. I associate it with being on my path, connecting with myself, finding that guiding light in myself. Kind of Power of Now vibes, you know. Okay, so with that in mind, I turn to Jessica Dore. She's got a page on the Star. Jessica wrote, "What makes having hope so hard for some people and not for others? Can you nurture hope where it's already living, or revive it where it seems to have shrunk back up or dried up altogether?" Jessica says a lot on that. And then she says, psychologist Erik Erikson believed that in each stage of our development, we experience a crisis that, should all go according to an idea plan for human living, allows us to emerge on the other side with a virtue. Hope is something we either learn or don't learn very early, end quote. And she means like before age 2, you know. According to Erik Erikson, that's when we're figuring out whether we can trust our surroundings. So you can see the combination of the scientific and spiritual here, right? Jessica Dore says grace and practice can look like reminding yourself that it isn't your fault if hope feels hard. And beyond that, she believes it's never too late to go back and claim our lost virtues: will, purpose, love, wisdom, and hope. There's a lot more there, even just in that one entry, but for now, I'll introduce my guest. You might have seen Deanne Smith on Netflix, and you're going to hear from them right now discussing Tarot for Change.
I greatly admire people that take different disciplines and kind of mix them up and create something new. Like before her, I didn't know anybody, and I still don't really know anybody that was talking about tarot with this kind of therapy lens, or talking about therapy with a tarot lens. You know, I feel like maybe since 2020, there's been more of that kind of mix up online. But I just love when somebody takes two different things and then makes their own.
Oh, yeah. And she's so thoughtful about it, too. But,
you know, I'm going to sound like a guy stalk Jessica Dore or something. So I'm about to say, I don't really know where she's at these days. I am part of her newsletter. But I know that what's interesting to me, what she said about this book is almost right after she wrote it, she had felt like, I've moved on. I wouldn't write the same book. Now, like wherever she's at in her journey is like beyond kind of what she put out in the book, which also as a creative person and someone who's trying to make things feels illuminating, because it's like she's kind of over it, but it's so useful. Like there's so much in it that it's interesting to think like, okay, you can just like make stuff and let it go, and it can affect other people whether or not you still think.
I definitely relate to that, because you spend years working on stuff, and you know when you start on it, it means a lot to you, and by the time they're able to, whoever they are able to sell it and get it out there and it reaches the people it needs to reach, you don't necessarily feel the same way. You're not the same person.
Yeah.
And letting things take on a life of their own can be challenging, but also can be liberating depending on the thing.
Yeah.
But what brought you to this book in the first place?
That's a good question. Do you know what? I would have followed her maybe on Twitter back when Twitter was Twitter. I don't know, but I know that I came across her, and she used to do like daily, I think it was Twitter. She used to do like daily polls, and she would draw a card and then say something about it. And I was like, oh, she's doing this on a level that I haven't seen anybody else do it. So it really resonated with me. And so I knew about her before the book. So I was just like psyched for the book to come out. And
at that time, was she bringing in the philosophy and the CBT and the DBT and all that?
Yeah.
That to me was very interesting, because I have been deep on tarot for like a few years now. And so for me at first, when I turned to one of the random cards, I was a little bit like, which she sort of spoke to this, that tarot people can get triggered by the book because they're like, that's not what it means.
Yeah.
I know what it means.
That's not the tarot interpretation.
Because you like pull, I remember there's one card, Two of Cups is probably the best example I can think of, that I pull the card. To me, that is a card about harmony, relationships. It's a card that's very positive to me. Like, oh, like I think I pulled Two of Cups today, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I am going to literally, the two of us are going to sit down and probably share a glass of something and
talk
have
about
our
emotions.
conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe tonight, me and my partner will go for a date. Like I'm like literally thinking about people.
Yeah.
Two people, a cup, but also like emotions.
Yeah.
And then I go to her page on Two of Cups, and it's all about projection and like projecting onto others and what we project on ourselves. And it's like a card or a reading I had to work through. Like,
yeah, that's interesting.
It's like, this isn't a card I'm like afraid of. Now I am afraid of it. Now if I'm talking about you, I'm talking about your interpretation.
Yeah.
But it is very different.
That is something about this book, I think, is I feel like she could take the fear out of traditionally, quote, scary cards like the Tower or death, or, if you just want to have a quick positive, negative association with the cards. She dispels that pretty well. But also, it's like every card, through her lens, every card is like an opportunity for some kind of self-reflection. And it's not comfortable necessarily,
Yeah. There's not really any card that is also just good.
It's like, you're doing great. Keep going.
Yeah. And I like those
it
cards.
Can be, yeah. But yeah.
Sometimes there's some cards I don't want to get too nerdy with the tarot specifics, but there's some cards I do take that way with tarot. It's just kind of like, yes, we got your back.
It feels great. Yeah.
The universe has got you. Keep going, girl. And I'm like, all right.
This is reminding me, it's seductive to use tarot in that way. Like, about a year ago, I think my girlfriend and I were going to do a mushroom trip, and we're like, let's do it with intention and, get the setting right, get our minds right. Let's draw a tarot card to just see what the mushrooms are going to show us or whatever. And, to both of our relief and delight, probably we pulled the 10 of Cups, which, is that one which kind of like a rainbow.
Yeah,
and it's
a
little
happy
family. And we're just like, awesome, So sometimes it is seductive to just see a quick image and then let it reflect how you want to feel about something.
Oh yeah. There's been times, I pull tarot literally every day, but there's been times where I almost feel like I'm gambling with it. Like
you don't want to see it. You don't want to know.
Well, I'm about to do something and I'm like, ooh, first let me pull the card. And I'm like, am I about to put myself in a mood if this isn't the card I want it to be?
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question then. Do you give tarot some kind of power to determine how you're going to feel about something? And do you consider it almost like a divinatory tool? What's going to happen? Let me pull this card and it holds some answer to the future.
It's a good question because I think I kind of almost view it in two different ways at the same time, which is I view it basically as a way to talk to myself.
Yeah.
But then I do have some kind of spiritual attachment to what that means.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what my spiritual beliefs are. How I would describe them, but there is something when I'm meditating, or if I'm meditating or trying to get in touch with my intuition, it is my intuition I'm trying to get. I know some people will be if they're talking to tarot, it would always be oh, who am I talking to? Or, they're using it in that kind of way, how people use Ouija boards. And
okay.
things.
I didn't really know about that way of using it.
But Ouija is the same kind of thing. You can use it or to get in touch with your own intuition.
Yeah.
Or some people are using it to try to get in touch with something else.
Yeah.
But me, I'm kind of open to whatever the vibe is. But overall, I feel I use it as a tool to get in touch with my...
Just remembering your Catholic upbringing and I'm a little scared of Ouija because the only time I dealt with it was as a teen or something. And I'm like, no, don't say you're open to whatever the vibe is. I'm picturing the Satan coming through the Ouija board.
Right.
No, you can't be open to whatever the vibe is.
Not whatever it is. But yeah, not just all the vibes.
No, I hear you though.
But it's that thing of all these tools, they can be used in different ways. Some people are using them to try to talk to ghosts and angels and spirits and such.
Yeah.
Other people, they're mainly trying to talk to themselves. And I sort of put myself in that category. But I'm not closed off to the other stuff. I'm just more so find myself trying to get in touch with my own intuition. And sometimes that feels like the deeper I go into that it's connected to a higher power. But
yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. I think that's kind of what I do too. I'm not drawing cards every day. There was a time where I went through that, I think. But now that you're saying it, I'm like, oh, it is kind of a good practice. Even if it's just a practice of checking in with yourself and how you're feeling about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is, and that's kind of the way this book looks at it is very cerebral, very thoughtful and using all these sources and references. But regardless, it's like of what interpretation of tarot I'm looking at, I'm thinking, oh, this is a way that I'm kind of how I feel about this tells me what's going on with me.
Totally. I mean, I would even notice like in the past, let's say if I'm like inclined to draw tarot about a relationship or about something, I'm like, okay, even just the inclination tells me this is, unsettling. This is, I'm bringing an energy to this relationship, or there's an energy in this relationship that I don't feel in control of, or maybe isn't the healthiest if I feel like I need to go to a fucking tarot deck to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and how do you most like to do tarot?
It's very simple what I do when I'm doing it. It's only ever for myself. So usually there would be like a little bit of a question, like some kind of a question, like what do I need to be shown today? Or, I'm thinking about moving what comes up, what tarot card, in the context of moving. Let me draw a card and see what that feels like. So I'm never really too specific with it, but I try to have an intention or an idea of what information I want to gather. I often do 3-card spreads that aren't necessarily like past, present, future, but sometimes just to give some context. I change it all the time. I know I've done like 3-card pulls with kind of like just, what do I need to know today? What is helpful moving forward? What's holding me back? Like there's like any kind of questions you can ask. Sometimes I do that sort of thing too.
Yeah, that's a great way to go about it. Well, knowing that we're gonna pull some tarot today, what's on your mind today?
That is a good question. What's on my mind today? Well, because I know you in the context of comedy, it might be interesting to draw something RE career. And then this is almost too personal. If you want to do this, we can do this too. My girlfriend and I had pulled a card together about like merging our lives and living together and our future. And she was like, oh, I wonder what Jessica Dore says about it. And I hadn't checked, and I told her I would check. So we could do that. But that was from a few days ago.
Either way, I think that's two good things to have in mind. And then whatever comes up, may speak to one or the other.
So that was the one I pulled with her was 2 of Pentacles, which I think is the one where it's kind of looks like an infinity symbol. There's this little juggler. They got the pentacles.
Balancing.
It looks very positive and great. It's not the tower. I would keep talking about the tower. It's not the tower. But
well, from a basic tarot understanding, that's a card that makes sense for what you're talking about, because it's a lot about balance and kind of juggling responsibility. Sometimes I think about it as like the work-life balance or the need to reprioritize.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
And knowing that y'all are in a long-distance relationship.
Yeah.
There's a lot to balance.
There's a lot to balance. So we'll see what Jessica Dore says about that.
Yeah, we could read this. My friends and I often joke about the concept of fun. We wonder what it is exactly, how challenging it can be to actually have it, and why fun seems to come so easily to some, while others, for example, us, find it hard to detach long enough from the more troubled dimensions of life to enjoy themselves.
Okay, it sounds like your friends suck a little bit, Jessica Dore. I'm sorry, but you sit around with your friends debating fun? That's insane. Okay, sorry.
So much of healing work is concerned with the prickly and painful things, the stuff that keeps us stuck in outdated patterns and structures. But just as joy without grief is merely half a life picture, the same is true for too much time spent in the somber without any fun or laughter mixed in.
Okay, I'm going to take this next paragraph. On a quest to better understand fun, I did what anyone with a tendency to engage life through the intellect would do, a bit of reading, which is where I came across the work of psychiatrist Shimi Kang In an interview, Kang talked about how our brains have feedback loops that give us information about how to create balance in our lives. When we get hungry, we eat. When we're tired, we sleep. When we feel lonely, we call a friend. But in modern life, we've become so disconnected from these feedback loops that a lot of us don't even realize we feel bad because we haven't slept, or because we're not eating enough, or because we're not doing the things that nourish our minds and bodies. We've gotten so good at analyzing and psychologizing that we've forgotten how to listen to the simple sounds of what our bodies are saying. A lot of the time, we don't even know we're supposed to be listening. Does that resonate?
It is interesting.
Yeah. Do you want to take the next one?
Maybe our ancestors didn't need to know they were supposed to be listening either. They just did because their survival depended on
I'm going to guess it.
it. The conveniences of modern life make it so that we don't really have to listen, or at least we don't feel like we have to. That is, until we're sick, burnt out, or depleted. In reading Kang's work, I realized that balance isn't just about the basics like eating and sleeping. It's also about having fun and being playful, especially for those who spend a disproportionate amount of time engaging with hard, serious things.
Okay. Donald Winnicott, who was a pioneer in the field of child development, described play as a process in which a paradox had, quote, to be accepted, tolerated, and not resolved. He felt that play required people to switch off the brain's instinct toward caution. And this makes intuitive sense because play requires the deployment of imagination to experience a reality that lives somewhere between the material and the imagined. In a world as desperately in need of people with the capacity to dream new realities as ours is, this strikes me as a crucial life skill.
Kang said that play activates the brain's prefrontal cortex and helps us learn to settle into spaces of unpredictability. The coins in the Two of Pentacles are airborne, but could fall at any time. They exist in a constant state of movement as represented by the infinity sign that wraps around and holds them together. This is a genius visual representation of what happens when we play, I think. Play is vital, says Kang, because without it, we have difficulty developing new ideas and concepts. We become perfectionists who can't make mistakes because we're uncomfortable with it.
Okay. It's easy to see how there might be a link between the rule-laden perfectionism and reluctance or difficulty engaging in play. Those of us who run our lives like tight ships leave little space for unpredictability. This unpredictability is what makes fun different from something like pleasure that comes with eating a meal you know is going to be fantastic, or discussing something you're passionate about with a good friend who shares your enthusiasm. Those things contain within them a controlled kind of pleasure, which isn't to say they're not important, just that they may not have the same medicinal quality for the person with an overly serious life who knows they need fun but struggles to tolerate the uncertainty of play.
A couple of weeks before writing this, I went sledding with a 6-year-old in a foot of fresh snow, and we did so slowly down the hill. We had to use our arms. Oh,
Slid.
wait. And we slid so slowly.
Yeah.
I was like, what? That we had to use our arms to get to the bottom. That was fun. I think what made it fun was that it wasn't what I expected. So there was an element of surprise and not being in control, but it wasn't scary or dangerous. Maybe play is when you give yourself over to situations where your ideas about what things are and how they will go can get disrupted in a way that's delightful and safe. Maybe in that process, you learn that it's safe to make mistakes in other areas of life too. Maybe.
All right. So, how are you feeling about this, or what resonates with you?
Well, it definitely is reminding me similarly. There was a book we read earlier in the podcast called 4,000 Weeks.
I don't know about it.
It's behind me somewhere, but it's all about time management and reprioritizing and productivity. But the book surprises you in that it sort of doesn't tell you how to do everything in the 4-Hour Work Week or whatever, all these
Okay.
other productivity books. Instead, it tells you to prioritize what's really important to you and having fun and like to move that stuff up on your list. And similarly, this card that I associate with reprioritizing in a kind of practical way, she's making about making time for what really matters, the being in the moment and having fun, and it's nice.
I'm wondering if in the context that you pulled it with the Knight of Wands and in a career context, and then that's clarifying, if it's like, yeah, go for it, charge ahead, do what you need to do, and don't lose sight of like what stand up is and what's fun about it and why you got interested in the first place. Maybe.
Yeah. It almost seems to be saying, don't worry about it so much.
Yeah.
Like, have fun. And you might find your answers in the fun instead of like worrying so much about the priorities.
Yeah. She does seem to be saying something about like controlling outcomes, right? When I think about it in the context that I pulled it, like the idea of merging lives and getting the same geographical place as my girlfriend, it reminds me, which we haven't decided where that is yet or what that is. I think we both are pretty good at engaging with life from a playful point of view, but it's a good reminder because we're also both quite seriously minded and somewhat politically minded, and our eyes are open, and it's 2025, And so, as we're thinking about, okay, how do we want to orient ourselves for the future? It's very easy to think, okay, well, we need a bunker and some fucking guns, and we need to grow food, and we're going to put up some false walls so we can house people and we'll help get them across the border to Canada. It's like easy to go down this very serious, very dark kind of route. So it's helpful to remember that we're not going to control everything, that life is also about joy and play and possibilities, and that you have to be engaging with that mindset to sometimes find the answers that you need.
Yeah. Kind of. It's interesting knowing, that, like she said, if you're spending a lot of time being very serious minded, as it sounds like y'all are, that she's saying, yes, reprioritize. But I was thinking of it in terms of reprioritizing, like, all right, what's more important, that y'all are doing XYZ in the places that you are separately or that you live together?
Yeah.
And prioritize each other or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but she's saying, like, prioritize the joy and the fun, which is a similar kind of, way you could interpret it, what the ending of that is.
Yeah.
But it's almost like, don't be so serious all the time is almost what she's saying in like a psychological way.
Yeah. I can be serious minded. I also can be very goofy, but I think it's funny. I don't really relate to the idea of like my friends and I joke about the concept of fun. Like, wow, that's so, in my mind, that's just like so intellectual. And I understand that there are people like that, but I don't really relate to this idea of like, I don't really know how to have fun, or I don't allow myself to.
Yeah. I get the every person writing like how to interpret tarot or anything like that, they're coming in with their own bias. So like, for example, she really likes the suit of swords and is like really all in on the swords.
It's intellectual. Yeah.
And then like the cups, she kind of more bends to be about something else, or the pentacles. But like, so she's super thoughtful, super intellectual, like you said, and probably is more used to people that are like very material oriented. So she's more used to like pulling them in a different direction. Whereas sometimes maybe us, like, we're very creative, wands people.
Yeah.
Who are like
wands people. Yeah, I like to think of myself as a wands person.
And so we might more so need to be pulled toward practical ideas.
Yeah.
Where she's like pulling us I don't know. It's impossible not to downplay how much I'm into tarot.
Wait, I got so confused on the negatives. Impossible not to downplay. You have to downplay it because you're
Even
too
no
into
matter
it.
how much I told you, like that
You're into it even more than that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Like I'm pretty into it, but
I'm happy to know that.
I'm like being like, yeah, I'm like for me, this book, yeah, it was definitely the perfect gift. So I appreciated it.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you liked it.
And in terms of, yeah, I think there's a lot to take away from it. Even if people aren't interested in tarot, there's a lot.
If you can't afford therapy, but you can afford a used copy of this book and a tarot deck, I think it's worth it. There's like little bits of wisdom on every page.
I agree with that.
There it is, wrapped up.
Yeah, that's the book. I mean, that's the podcast too.
Self-Help Book Club.